like they used to. Can't place your bets on the 9 to 5. Things don't work like they used to. No, there's not enough to keep you alive.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. Today's guest is a holistic health promoter, a mental health advocate, an author, a pet sitter, a YouTuber, and a podcaster. She does many different things. Her name is Pamela Topjian. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the invite. Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks.
No, it's a pleasure to have you here. I get sent a lot of, this show, people have asked me what this show is about, and it's evolved. I mean, it's open, it's varied, but I suppose the thread that kind of binds it all is life stories of different people around the world. And every now and again, I'll get sent a story that's like, I have to approach it a bit of a different way, you know? I have to like really think about like how I'm going to approach that and everything. And I suppose it's the part of the challenges of being an interviewer and putting together a show that I think is informative and handles sensitive issues properly, but also gives people a chance and an opportunity to speak about things at length, hopefully in a comfortable environment. So yeah, once again, just thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I thought, instead of just jumping into something insane, I thought I'd kind of like let you take the steering wheel and we'll kind of go from there. So Pamela, where does your story begin?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is in the intro, I'm a former nurse and a former hypnotherapist. And it's interesting because I've been on quite a few podcasts and that's always mentioned. People are so interested in leaving the nursing part, and and so that's kind of funny. But so where does my story start? Oh my gosh! So I've survived all different types of childhood trauma, and which led into trauma in my adulthood, until I had a major mental breakdown. And from there, that was really the catalyst to where I find myself today, which is unbelievably just an amazing life. And it's nothing special, nothing big. It's not like a rags to riches story or a victim to victor story. It's nothing like that. But I just pinch myself every day that this is my life. And I would have never thought that I would say that even just, maybe 10 years ago. So we can get into depths of anything that you'd like, or, I'm completely an open book. You mentioned I'm an author. So after that major mental breakdown and through therapy, I started writing a journal just to kind of connect those dots, because I never really understood how the childhood trauma related to where I found myself during that mental break. And so that was just started as a journal. And while I was journaling and while I was in therapy, I was reading other memoirs and autobiographies of not famous people, but just other women and people in general. But I think I was reading mostly women's stories who have survived a lot and went on to love their lives and do more with their lives. So just to kind of give me that hope to know it's possible. So then that gave me the idea that maybe my story would be relatable to people as well. And maybe this journal should turn into a book.
I think people like you are amazing, really, because it takes a lot of guts, I think, to talk about very personal issues. And, everyone has a different way of dealing with it. Moving through life. I mean, I've interviewed people all around the world. I've interviewed a lot of people who've been through
horrendous things,
some horrible stuff, just like yourself. And again, another thread that binds everyone is all of those people have kind of moved to a point where they're like, well, you know what, I'm not going to let that affect me and how I live my life. But everyone's got a different story of how they achieved that. And let's look at that trauma side of things for a second. You mentioned that it wasn't until sort of later that you got help that you needed. And I wonder, when it comes to like because this is the thing, a lot of people don't understand what trauma is or what it looks like. We've begun to understand in more recent decades, and I think people are finally starting to take it seriously. I know amongst me and my friends, when we've got a darker sense of humor, we might tend to joke about childhood trauma and be like, yeah, that's why I'm so messed up, right? Yeah, no, it is. And if it's not addressed, you 100% see it in adult life. And I've had to work on certain things myself, and it's a process, and I think you do really spend your whole life sort of working through it. So when it comes to that childhood trauma, what point did you start realizing maybe there's a problem? Because whatever you dealt with, whatever you went through, that was what you grew up with.
Right.
And when we're like, children are not stupid. Like, children can understand when something's wrong. This isn't
normal.
Right. But sometimes that will happen, like, by comparison. You go to a friend's house and you're like, oh, they live differently. This is what I'm used to. So at what point did you start realizing something was wrong, something was different?
So, just like you said, going to friends' houses and that, and realizing, oh, they have snacks. They have a snack cabinet, let alone have to be home for dinner at a certain time. I mean, it's like, we didn't have enough food. Like, I literally went days sometimes without hardly eating at all. So, and I knew that wasn't normal, even without the comparison, of course. But yeah, just stuff as simple as that. And, I moved around a lot. And so, after my parents divorced, which was when I was about 9 years old, and then we moved around a lot. We didn't have enough food. I didn't have clothes and shoes that fit and stuff like that. But always being like the new person. And then also, I think I just kind of looked like, like wearing old clothes or clothes that didn't fit me right. I didn't have a winter jacket for a couple winters, and I grew up in the Midwest of the U.S., where winters are kind of harsh, and I can remember being made fun of, like I was wearing just like a windbreaker, we called it, and this is back in the 70s, and, why aren't you wearing your winter coat? Oh, I'm not that cold. I would just pretend, but I didn't have a winter coat. So just, definitely I would say by comparison is how I knew. And also realizing that people have friends from like kindergarten in school, and you're like in 5th, 6th grade, and some of these people have known each other basically their whole lives. And again, I guess that's by comparison, and then realizing we are always in another school, in another apartment, and in another area. And and this is before social media, before the internet, so you couldn't like really keep in touch with your friends. I do have a couple friends that I had from when I was younger, but when I would move, we would write physical letters, snail mail, and send things. It was a big deal to have some sort of stationery and to be able to get a stamp. And it was nice to like keep in touch with your friends and wait for that mail to come in.
It makes it more personal, isn't it? I feel.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways I could tackle this.
I know. There's so much for the short amount of time. Yeah.
With your parents. Was this like something where they were just very poor and not able to provide these things, or was it a case of because obviously they're neglecting you, but sometimes neglect can come from like, well, we don't have anything either, like,
right.
What are we supposed to do? And it's almost like putting the problem on the child, which is completely ridiculous. But was it a problem of their own volition, or was it like connected to whatever they were dealing with? Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were probably lower middle class when my parents were married. We had a house in the suburbs. It was a small house. It wasn't an elaborate neighborhood or anything, and we had food. Um, but my parents divorced, and my father, and again, this is the 70s, my father never paid any child support, and I had 2 other sisters. So my mother didn't have a college education, and so she was trying to make enough to support 3 children and herself, all on her own in the 70s. And so, yeah, so really that was what it was the reason. We never saw my father on any kind of regular basis, so not only did my mother not get support as far as financially, but she didn't even get a break, you know. She didn't have, you know, we didn't see my dad every weekend or every other weekend or even any kind of regular basis at all. So that's really what it came down to, why we were in that situation. And I forget what else I was going to say about that. So that's why. Oh yeah. So when I did go to therapy at the age of 50, that's when I first realized, you mentioned neglect. That's when I first realized that I had a neglectful childhood, that it was a form of abuse, though unintentional abuse, you know, but that was something that I had went through. I didn't even connect those dots at that point as far as, you know, childhood having, you know, the therapist mentioned PTSD, you know, and going through all this childhood trauma that I didn't even connect as, you know, that I had a traumatic childhood. Another part of that is my oldest sister was killed in a car accident when she was 18, and it was just before my 14th birthday. So that's part of that as well. And then some SA abuse, you know, not by any family member or adults, but by date rapes and that in my early teens. And so, you know, all of that stuff compounded, and not having a dad in my life, I think that directly related to the toxic and abusive marriages that I ended up in.
What kind of role would you say your mum played in kind of keeping things together? Because you've mentioned some big things there. You know, you're poor, the father's not contributing, you're struggling as a result, your sister unfortunately dies in a car accident. Like this, there's so much going on here. I mean, a lot of the time when it's like something super serious like that, or a series of events like that, sometimes it can be gung-ho and someone just pushes through it and never deals with the impact of that until later when it becomes a problem. Other times people break down and they just can't handle it. Like, walk me through kind of the day-to-day in your household, and were you tight-knit? Were there problems between you? What do you remember of that?
So before my parents divorced, my mother and my father would yell at each other a lot, and it was mostly at the dinner table because that's when we all came together. Wow, okay. And so my mother would leave the table, go sit on the porch. She smoked cigarettes, so she would sit there and smoke and cry. I would also leave the table and go sit with her. And I was 7, 8 years old, around there. And that was a pretty regular kind of a happening. And how that was.
Were your parents, if you don't mind me asking? How old?
How old? Probably in their 30s at that point. Because I know my mother had me in her 20s, and I was under 10, so early 30s probably. Yeah. So then when they divorced when I was 9, and we moved out, and then we kept having to move due to financial reasons. And my mother was never around. I mean, she was trying to work several jobs, and when she was home, she was sleeping. Even if she was sitting up, you know, like to watch a movie or something, or I should say TV. I mean, we didn't have movies unless something was on TV. But she would fall asleep, you know, so she was always asleep when she was home. And I know that, so my sisters were 4 and 5 years older than me. So I know that they were young teens. So I know she probably had told them to keep an eye on me and help me in whatever else, but they didn't. I mean, they were teens, had their freedom, and they were always gone. So I was alone a lot, and I was very fearful for some reason. I was very fearful. I was alone. I would hide, actually, like physically hide. I don't know what I was hiding from. I mean, it's really kind of a weird concept to think about. I don't really understand that, but still to this day, but that's what I did. And somebody else had mentioned that, another podcaster mentioned I was probably trying to just be part of the surroundings. I just didn't feel like I, was fully, I don't know, not fully human, but, just like sort of trying to blend in with my surroundings when I was hiding. I don't know. But yeah, so that was, my mother. I really had no parental guidance or, let alone supervision or anything. So yeah.
With your sisters, I mean, did you have a good relationship with them? You mentioned that like they didn't really contribute to like looking after you, and I understand to some extent, but on the other side of it, it's like they will have seen how things were affecting you, and I mean you were only a child, you know what I mean? And it's I've seen when I did volunteer work, I remember I delivered some sofas to a property, and the mother was at the top of the stairs, and she was quite a large woman. She couldn't move easily. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. There were two girls. One was 6, 7, and she was sort of bubbly, playing around, laughing, talking to the other delivery man that was with me. The elder girl, 13, 14, deadly serious the entire time. And I could feel the weight of responsibility on her shoulders because she might have been in a school uniform, but she was like having to be a parent.
Yeah.
And when you could tell she was on guard as well, I think, because we're strangers in her home.
Right.
And when we took the sofas out, put the new sofas in, all of that, I could see like she begun to unravel a little bit, and she was smiling, and suddenly there's the little girl, and it broke my heart to see that.
Yeah.
Because that came from the mother, putting that pressure on her. So bringing it back to your sisters, I mean, what was your relationship like with them?
I did not have a relationship with my sisters.
Wow. Okay.
And somebody else had asked me, was your older sister the oldest one then take on the mother role? No, she didn't. And that's the oldest one is the one who passed away in the car accident. And my other sister and I, right now and throughout most of my adulthood, have had a terrible, tumultuous relationship. And so we just don't get along at all. And so we still, I don't really have them or her even. So I didn't have a good relationship. My oldest sister at one point, I remember, and it was less than a year before she was in that car accident, she had kind of sat us down, like we had a little meeting almost with us 3 girls, and said something about foster care. And she was aware enough because she was probably 14 when my parents divorced. So she had most of her childhood kind of with enough food, enough clothes, in the same house and everything, same neighborhood and all that. And she could see probably how it was affecting me, mostly because I was the youngest and they were 4 and 5 years older than me. And she talked about calling like CPS on our mom. And we all understood that, mom was between a rock and a hard place, that it wasn't like she was purposefully not, getting food or purposefully getting evicted or not being able to afford rent and stuff like that. But it was just more so we could eat and have a regular childhood. And that was, less than a year before she had passed, and nothing was ever done. But I remember her, that's kind of the first time or the only time I remember her sort of stepping up and thinking we need to do better for ourselves because obviously our parents aren't taking care of us. But that never happened.
Just something that does surprise me is, you were all dealing with the same thing. I thought there might be some togetherness on that, at least as a sort of, hey, we're all in the same boat here. Would you say it was just because you were just different people, dealt with it different? Because obviously you're all experiencing the same trauma, but in a different way. Right.
Yeah, I think we were all very different, really, honestly. So they were like just over a year apart. They were not even very far apart in age.
Were they close to each other?
No, that's what I was just going to say. So they were so different from each other that they weren't even close with each other. And in fact, my oldest my oldest sister used to introduce my other sister as, this is my mother's other daughter, or this is, she never would even say her name or call her sister, so they didn't get along. And then I was like 5 and 4 years younger. It seemed like there was, it's not that huge of an age group, but it really felt like, age difference, but it really felt like it. They didn't know what was going on in my life, and I never spoke up. I never was asked. I never thought that it would matter to speak up. They both were teenagers. They had friends who had cars. They were gone all the time. They both had jobs. They were buying themselves clothes and food. There was once or twice that they did, one or both of them would bring me home some fast food or something, but, not on any kind of regular basis. So I can remember one time asking my mom if I could, a friend wanted me to eat over at their house, and I couldn't, we didn't have cell phones again. So I thought I couldn't unless I asked permission. And so I didn't. And then when I asked my mom later, she said, if anybody ever asks you to eat over, you can eat over. You don't need to, she was like, oh my gosh, you passed up a free meal. She felt bad about that. But yeah, so my sisters weren't, we weren't all in cahoots with each other, with taking care of each other and making sure we were okay. But that one time, like I said, my oldest sister said, hey, let's all have this talk. What do we think about this? Yeah.
Why do you think you didn't get on? What was the issue there? Gosh,
I don't really know.
Have you blocked this? Like, is it kind of like a blocker, or is it just like it's a long time ago? To be fair,
I think it was a long time ago. But so, we just were all so different, I guess. We didn't have the same friend group. We didn't have the same interests. I don't know. And maybe I've sort of blocked it out, but, we never got along. When I was very young and we were all in the house with my mom and my dad, they just really ganged up on me. They picked on me all the time. And, and so I kind of grew up hating them, because they were always kind of mean to me. And, then, as I got a little older and they got a little older, it didn't get any better. Not that they, they didn't pick on me or weren't mean to me well, my one sister's mean to me. She still is, but she's, but so that, I don't know. I don't know why we didn't get along.
Did you ever, because I want to sort of focus on the relationship you had with your mother there. Did you ever tell her about this? It's clear you didn't feel any resentment towards her. It certainly doesn't feel like there's any kind of negative vibes from her to you, but like, what would you say that relationship was like, and how come maybe she wasn't intervening between you and your sisters?
She would say, when we were very young, she would be like, we have to we have to figure it out. We're sisters. We have to figure it out. Like, she didn't feel like it was her place, or I don't know exactly how she felt, because we've never talked about it. But, she was just like, you guys figure it out. She would yell from the other room, you guys figure it out. And so we didn't really feel like I didn't feel like I had somebody on my side to say, hey, they're, bopping me in the head, whatever. So I didn't feel like I had anybody on my side. Saying that, I felt like I was more close with my mother than my sisters were. And, always had a really, when I was very little, I was at her hip pretty much the whole time. And I think that my older sisters resented that, because it was them two and they were almost like twins, and it was those two. And then 4 years later, I came along, 5 years later, I came along. And then I was like attached to my mom's hip the whole time until they divorced, and that's why too, when they would fight and I would be the one to go outside with my mom and sit next to her while she was crying and smoking, and they would stay inside and finish their dinner with our dad. So yeah, I guess that's yeah.
So you mentioned what was your mother doing for work?
So she did a lot of different office jobs, really. And she worked for a moving company, and she worked for like a trucker dispatch company, and she was a bartender then at night. And so just those kinds of jobs, and it wasn't enough. You said I don't hold resentment towards her or anything, and I really don't, because I'm just amazed that she kept trying. She kept going, and she kept trying. I don't feel like she did anything to try to push my dad to help at all. But one place I do kind of have a little bit of, hard feelings is she always smoked. And we didn't have food, but she had cigarettes. Now, on the other hand of that, maybe that's what kept her alive, Maybe that's the only thing she had to keep her going. Who knows? I don't know how bad it got for her, but she was somebody before the divorce. She was a preschool teacher. She was a Girl Scout leader. She did tutoring and piano teaching for children. She very much loves children and always wanted to have more children than what she had. So it had to have really hurt her to not be able to be the mother that she wanted to be, because she couldn't afford it and because there was no time. So I know that, that really hurt her.
You mentioned you'd be arguing and she's in the other room, oh, figure it out yourself. So this woman in your life is a tired woman. She's not dealing with things well. You see her a handful of hours if you're lucky. Was she just not interested? I understand the context you've given as far as she had a lot going on. I do understand that, but it's just fascinating to me because, like you said, she's this person before the divorce. She loved children. She had all these very wholesome kind of careers, and then now she's having to take on anything. I've done bartending, I've done stuff like that. It's brutal. It's if it's not, imagine a woman in the 70s, 80s. I can imagine what kind of crap she was dealing with, as well as just customer service in general, and etc. etc. So it paints the picture of a woman who was probably pretty lonely, pretty resentful, struggling, dealing with the issue of a divorce and everything. Did you get any kind of, I don't know, life advice from her, time with her, any good memories with her, anything like that?
There's some good memories. I do feel like, as far as advice, I can remember once, and this is when we were really little, my sister, if I said, Kim made me so mad, And the advice she gave, and for some reason this really sticks with me, is she didn't make you mad. Only you can make you mad. Like, only you are in control of your own emotions. It's like, this is kind of advice you see in like memes now today, is, that, that you decide how you're going to feel about a situation or something. So she had given that advice when I was very young, and I didn't really understand it at the time, but for some reason it stuck with me. So that was very good. But so growing up and, going through adolescence and all of that, I had nothing. And that's, I think, a big part of why I ended up in the relationships that I did, because I had no guidance or, no sort of, explanation of anything or instructions of anything. And so that's why I feel like I got into a lot of the situations that I did, which ended up, harming me and being traumatic for me throughout my life. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that she was so involved in children, but then, a little bit later in life, she couldn't really barely take care of her own children. It's surprising, I think, that in today's world, people would have called, like probably the school even, would have called CPS,
This is what I wanted to get onto next, actually, was to say, I know it's the 70s. I know things would have been different. I get that. And obviously in the United States, state by state, laws and expectations are different. But surely there would have been some teachers, parents of kids who would have been like, what gives? Like, what do you mean you've not eaten? Okay, I've noticed your clothes haven't changed or they're too big for you or whatever. Like, did anyone try and help or point something out or just anything at all?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. I mean, maybe people said things to my mother. I don't know. We did, occasionally, my mom would bring home a bag of clothes that someone gave her that we had to shuffle through and see if anything fit. Who knows where she got those from? So there were people that knew her situation, probably, I imagine, people from the bar, that she worked at would come in and say, hey, I've got this bag of clothes, maybe someone would fit your kids. I don't know, that's what I'm imagining. So something like that, just occasionally we'd get that. I don't remember getting free food from anyone or anything like that. You said people, maybe somebody would say, oh, what's going on that you haven't eaten? I hid that from people. I didn't tell people that I didn't eat. And I would bring my little lunchbox and there was nothing in it. And I would pretend that there was something. I know, it's so sad. It's so sad now, but I would pretend almost to eat, which is ridiculous. And to think that no adult in the lunchroom noticed that this little girl wait a minute, is she just pretending to take a bite of something under a napkin? But nobody ever said anything to me.
And no teachers noticed? Not a single one of them?
They never did anything if they did. Yeah, in this day and age, I think they would. But at that time, they didn't. And that's what I mean. It's so crazy to think of now, because I've worked in the public schools, when I think any parent has done some time in the public schools and been in those lunchrooms, and you're really watching out for what's going on. You're really looking for fights or for people trading food, stuff like that. So you're looking kind of closely through all the tables and everything. I think that I would have noticed, and maybe it's because it was my experience as well, but I think I really would have noticed if there was one of the kids that continuously, you never really saw them eating. I think I would have noticed that.
What about other children? You mentioned sometimes going around friends' houses and stuff like that. So you had friends. You made some friends, and that's, I mean, especially when you're dealing with all of that, it must have been such a great thing to have that. Did they try to help? Did their parents try to help?
No, I don't know that they knew, and if they did know, they didn't really let me know that they knew, I'm sure that parents had to notice that my mother was never around, that I would be playing outside. I never had my sister or my mom around with me, and some of the other parents would be sitting outside while all the kids were playing, and I'm thinking of a specific apartment building, other parents would be sitting outside and we'd all be playing. So they had to kind of notice, and maybe the adults talk to each other, who knows? I don't know. I'm just assuming. But yeah, nobody said anything to me. Or I can remember some friends talking about my clothes and asking me, and I would just be like, oh, this is my favorite, or oh, I like this one, or it's my favorite color, or whatever. I never was honest as far as, oh, I don't have anything else, or I don't remember when we last did laundry, or, this doesn't fit anymore because I like it so much, or whatever. I didn't say that. And like, I had, my shoes were always too small, and I ended up having bunion surgery in my teens because of the shoes never fitting. But I never told anybody, and I knew I couldn't tell my mom because I felt like, it would hurt her, or she would feel bad, and I didn't want her to feel bad. That goes back to going out on the porch with her while she's crying and smoking when my mom and dad would fight. That kind of goes back to that, I think, because I didn't want to make her cry.
So you were always kind of quiet and not even just telling friends about this? Like, did you ever just like confide in them and be like, hey, it's hard at home sometimes, or?
No, I was embarrassed. And I was pretending, that things were okay. Because I wanted to be like them, and they had, in apartments, a lot of time there is a single parent situation in apartments. So it wasn't like everybody had a perfect life anyway. And there were other kids occasionally that, I noticed, maybe others didn't, but I would notice that maybe they've worn the same clothes for a few days, or maybe their clothes didn't fit, or that they were, that they never mentioned, some kids would mention going out to eat, some kids would mention fast food, or I got to go in for dinner, blah, 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 and some of us didn't mention that stuff.
With the other kids that you did sort of notice, did you ever connect with them? Was there any sort of, or was it just kind of everyone kept to themselves?
Yeah. Or if the other ones, talked about it, I'd be more likely just to be quiet and just think to myself, I can understand that, or, oh, there's someone else like me. But I always, for some reason, I just kept quiet, kept it kind of a secret. Yeah. Now,
you mentioned abuse earlier. I guess what I'm trying to do with this interview and this show is try to build, upbringing, you as an adult, and then onwards. I really want to kind of paint a picture and move through it. And thank you so much for helping me do that. Like, it's thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you as well.
So you mentioned abuse. Now, one thing, the reason why I'm asking this question is, with building kind of a picture of your childhood, obviously what I'm noticing is you're not really safe. There's no father around, the mother's never around. In the UK, many decades ago, we had this thing known as latchkey kids, where, right. I don't know if you had that in the States, but like...
Yeah.
Right, so back in the day, for those who don't know, there were many kids who, maybe they just had... not like a set of keys, but the door was left on the latch so you can get in and out, which is crazy unsafe. But obviously, right. Back in the day, people weren't thinking about pedophiles or predators or whatever. And I suppose a lot of it...
pre-internet, we didn't know as much as we know now. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing as well. It's like, it depends on the neighborhood you live in, how well you know your neighbors, a lot of different factors. Where this abuse situation is concerned, would you say that was as a result of the unsafe situation you were in? Did it invite that, or was it a bit more complex than that?
I don't know that it was due to the unsafe conditions. It was more due to the lack of guidance. And so 2 of the SAs that happened to me were through dates with other young men my same age.
So just your teen years, basically.
Yeah, not
Okay.
having discernment. Another one was at a friend's house, and there was quite a few people over, and somebody had, a boy that was, still a teen, but quite a few years older than me, tried to attack me, in a sexual way. And that was kind of, that might be kind of due to the neighborhood we were in. But otherwise, I think more so it was the lack of any kind of discernment or understanding of how to be safe and who and what to watch out for, that kind of stuff, having no guidance to that. Yeah, I think that's part of that.
Obviously, I understand, based on the picture you've painted, that you weren't the sort of person to go and talk to people about when you were dealing with things.
Right.
But obviously this is another level. This is a really horrible situation to find yourself in a couple of times. Was there anyone you spoke to about this? Did you I mean,
No.
why?
No, because so one of them was threatening me if I told anybody, then then this or that or whatever. But I, other than that, I just felt like, so I had one friend, I remember telling her, and she didn't believe me. And so that was like kind of really set the stage for, oh, I guess it's really like, nobody was there. So it's not like, it's just like this person's word against this person's word. And so I never really thought that it would be helpful to tell anybody. And again, with my mother, it would be the same kind of thing. Like it would just upset her, and I didn't want to upset her. That's been like the theme of my life. Like even my book, she doesn't even know I wrote my book because I don't want her to feel more guilt at this time in her life. I mean, she's in her 80s now. I mean, right now, she's early dementia and stuff, so it wouldn't even compute with her now. But also that is, I couldn't have this conversation with her now in this, at this time. She wouldn't really get what I was saying. Or if she did, it would just make her feel incredibly guilty. And she holds enough guilt. She doesn't need that, especially now. So yeah, that's been kind of the theme of my life, is try to make mom's life easier, it seems.
But did you never feel like, she owed you some more responsibility there? I mean...
Yeah, but it's not like she doesn't get that herself. Not like she doesn't understand that herself. It wouldn't be as a, it wouldn't be a revelation to her. And even like, I've even told her, like occasionally she will talk about feeling bad about this or that from the childhood. And I'll occasionally say to her, I know you've done the best you could. Look, we're doing great now, so we're all good right now. So, don't think about that now. It was in the past. I say that to her. I've thought several times about it. It's too bad she couldn't get some sort of therapy or something. And I wonder if they even do work with people who, are in the beginning stages of dementia. I mean, she has these feelings that still come out occasionally, but she could really use some therapy or even just counseling, because she does have some guilt there. And I don't want her to go to her grave with that. But she probably will, unless she forgets beforehand. Yeah.
Let's talk about your father for a moment. He moves away. He just leaves. The divorce happens. He leaves. Based on what you kind of laid out, it sounds like I'm going to assume that he was the one pushing the arguments and being kind of the source of the arguments. Would that be accurate?
Well, so first of all, we moved away. He didn't move away because the house was in such disrepair that we moved out. So my mom moved out with three daughters. I think that the source of the arguments were more, my mother has always been loud. She's always been one to yell. So that's not really that unusual for her. My dad was more quiet, but he was always on the picket line. He was very political, and he would be on strike a lot of times. And so I know that was sort of the, things were not getting done, bills were not getting paid. Like I said, the house was in such disrepair that we didn't even want to stay there. So So she would start, probably yelling at him about work, about striking, about, she would say, your daughters are your priority. Your family is your priority, and I think that for him, and then through the rest of his life, his whole political beliefs and, he was really involved politically with a lot of different things, like even boycotting a certain, crop or whatever because of whatever farm workers and stuff. So, he was very into all of that, so much so that he wouldn't be working, or he wouldn't, he would leave his job for things. And that was the biggest argument between them. So I'm sure that when he came home from whatever, my mother started laying into him, I'm sure. I mean, I don't remember, but yeah.
Sounds kind of fair. I mean, what
Mm-hmm.
the hell was he doing? Three daughters. Like, you need to be working, pal. Like, yeah.
Right.
Okay. So
Right.
it's kind of not difficult to see why the divorce happened, but
Yeah.
with the child support angle, I mean, how was he getting away with not paying and supporting? Like, isn't it a legal requirement? I know in the States, like, these things tend to be even more serious where the law is concerned. Yeah. Like, how?
Yeah, so in the United States at that time, in the 70s, I don't think that it was a law, and if it was, it wasn't enforced.
Okay.
So I'm part of the statistic that made it a law, because statistically, so many fathers got away with not paying child support, or just paying what they could when they could, or what they wanted to pay. There wasn't really as much of a court order. And also statistically, like you had assumed, the family, whoever, the mother with the children would stay in the house, and then the father would leave. And so they were a little more set up to stay in their neighborhood, to, and maybe the father would continue paying the bills, for the household, but there wasn't like a money exchange. But yeah, that in the 70s, that didn't happen. And my mother expected, I know they had some agreement. I don't know if it was through the courts or not, but I know they had some agreement. We had moved in the same neighborhood, just in, like a duplex. So we were in a much nicer home, and we were in the same area. And then within a year, we were out of there. I'm sure that was because my mother expected that he would help, and he didn't, and we couldn't afford it. So we moved to an area that was, just a much poorer area, and in apartment complex. And yeah, and so then I think that from there, it was just, we were evicted a couple times, and I don't know if my mother, I'm not sure. She was good with numbers, and, later on in life she would do taxes and stuff, but I'm not sure if she really knew how to budget or understand, this is how much I make, taxes will be taken out, this is how much I need to be able to live here, and, so yeah.
So they get divorced, you guys move out. Do you ever see him again?
Very occasionally, not even every year. So every once in a great while through my childhood. And it wasn't until, so I had my first child at 17, and it wasn't until that time that we kind of saw him a little more regularly. He started, and then a couple years later, my sister had some children. You would think that when our oldest sister passed away, and we were, I was a young teen, you would think that he would come around more, but he didn't even then. It wasn't until after we had children, and he was a grandfather, and he was a pretty good grandfather to all of our kids, but yeah, he, as a father, he wasn't really around.
Did your mom or did you ever take him to task for that?
I don't think my mother really ever spoke to him. I think there was which I don't understand this, but I think there was a level of, she felt sorry for him For some reason, part of that, I think my grandmother, and I never understood this when I was little, my grandmother felt sorry for him. And so I don't know what story he was telling. I don't even know to them. But yeah, she never, so he was on his deathbed. He died. He was only 69 years old, and he was on his deathbed, and for some reason, my sister took her to see him, and she was yelling at him, get up, your daughters are here to see you, get up. And it's kind of funny to think
on your deathbed,
and she,
Jesus.
But I wasn't there. It was just my other sister. But so this was a man who was like, he was in bed, he was days away from dying, and they were saying he was unresponsive and everything. If anybody wants to come say goodbye to him, now's the time. So he had not had any expression, he had not had any interaction with anybody in days. And so when my mom yelled at him, like they said, his eyebrows went up. So I can just imagine him being like, oh, there she is, you know. So it's kind of a funny story now, but yeah. So that was like one of the last things he heard was my mom yelling at him again. But I think she kind of got back at him a little bit for that. I don't know if that was her intention or she was just trying to jar him awake. I'm not sure what was going on there, but yeah.
You said that he stepped up as a grandfather, which is great to hear. I mean, did that come from a sense of guilt, or was he just ready to finally take on some responsibility?
I think that my other sister kind of laid into him because they were a lot closer. They lived in the same, I have moved several times in different states. My sister has stayed in the same state. And so they were closer, and she would go visit him, occasionally and stuff like that. So I think that my sister must have, laid into him a little bit. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, so we didn't talk about it, which is crazy now. Again, I didn't want to make him feel bad, and I was glad that he was being grandpa, but I don't know that my kids even knew, really. They know now, but I don't think they knew that he hadn't been around for us when we were kids, or at least me, because I was so young when they divorced. But yeah, I think it was partially out of guilt, and he probably saw at that time, having little ones in your life is just so amazing, and if you don't have little ones in your life, it's, you don't really understand how that can feel. Not everybody loves children, but I think that, it just made him feel good, and these little kids had no idea, no preconception or prejudgment of who he was or what he's done or hasn't done. And, they just loved him too. So I think that, he enjoyed that.
So you move out of home at what age?
You mean as an adult?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was in my early 20s, very early 20s. I had my son when I was 17, so I think I was about 20 years old, 21 maybe. My cousin, who was just a few years older than me, she was living at home, and she was trying to move out as well, and so we decided to move out and get an apartment together. So we both moved out at the same time and had an apartment together. Yeah.
And what did your life look like in your 20s? Like, what were you... Because obviously it's a big change to go from that life to this new life. You got a young child, but maybe you're in a better place now. Like, walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, so right around the same time that my son was born, my mother... so my uncle, her brother, had a nice house in a nice neighborhood, and he and his wife were divorcing, and they didn't have any children. And he knew the troubles that my mother was going through, and so he offered her to come rent from him so that if she couldn't pay a month or she was short or whatever, it wouldn't be a big deal and we wouldn't be evicted again, and a little more stability and security for her. And we were older, of course, by then. And so he offered to rent the house to her. So now we were in a nicer neighborhood. We had food, we had clothes, all of that, and so that was my mid-teens. So that had changed already. So when I had moved out, I was working at a where was I? Where was I working at that time? So I just had different jobs, and my mother babysat on the weekend. My mother would have my son, her first grandchild, over the weekend, and so I would work during that time. And soon after we moved out, my cousin became pregnant, and she had asked me to not work and stay, except for maybe the weekends, but to stay with her baby while she worked, because she made more money and she was in a higher position, and the two of us, she made more money. So thinking back, I think I was working retail, and I worked at a daycare center and just stuff like that. But then she had asked me to stay there, and she ended up having twins, which we didn't know till she had them. But so I was home with my child. He was still before kindergarten year age, and then these infant twins, and so taking care of them. So I was essentially a live-in nanny. And then on the weekends, after my cousin had her twins, then she would be home for the weekend. So then I would go stay at my mom's house to kind of give her that space with her babies. Since I was their caretaker during the week, I wanted to sort of leave her alone with them. And so at that time, then I would work on the weekends while my mom still watched my son. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah. So moving it forward, because obviously we know that you experienced a breakdown at 50. We're getting there. Yeah. But in those decades, when do these marriages happen? Like what ages are you?
Yeah, so I was mid-20s. I was about 25, I think, when I married my first husband. And we were married for 15 years. So that was a pretty long marriage. But we had moved out of state. That was my first time moving out of state. So I'm away from any family, friends that I knew.
Did he suggest that, or was that your choice?
No, that was definitely his, because we went back to where he was from. So he was only in Illinois, which is where we were for school. And then even when we started dating, though, it wasn't like a surprise. So even when we started dating, he was like, I'm moving back to, it was Upper Michigan. He's like, I'm moving back, as soon as I'm able to. So just so you know.
Okay.
I didn't have a problem with that, because I didn't really feel like, people tend to not see each other even though they're close, just because it's always like available. But then you're like, well, I never see anybody anyway. I don't really, as far as family and whatever. And, it might be interesting to go somewhere different. So, I didn't really have a problem with that. But it was kind of difficult then when I had my daughter. So after I had her, then it felt really lonely, I didn't have family around, and I had made some friends by that point. But yeah, we were married for 15 years, but it was only about, maybe a few years in, maybe 5 years in or so, he changed his career. So he became involved in law enforcement, and he became very controlling. And he was critical of absolutely everything I did. And when I say he was abusive, it was more just emotional and verbal abuse. It was the second husband that was abusive in every way. So I really jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire, as they say, with that second marriage. But yeah, with the first one, I really tried to, I kept saying, well, at least my kids aren't hungry. At least, they can have sort of a stable household. At least he's not hitting me. He's not, I didn't really think at that time that what he was doing was abusive. Again, in therapy, she kind of let me know that emotional abuse and verbal abuse is a real thing. And, it brings you down just as much as physical abuse can. So that was the first marriage, yeah.
Because one thing that has been very clear throughout the show so far is that you don't tend to take people to task for when they're in the wrong, but it comes from a place of like, you know, you're a very like nice, decent, genuine person. You're just trying to see the positive or trying to balance things out a bit in your mind. Like you just being nice, maybe too nice. I don't know. It's one of them, isn't it? It's like, can you be too nice? Well, if people walk all over you, yeah, but it's a tough one, isn't it? Because no one really wants confrontation in life. It lasted 15 years. So was this like straight away, or was it something that happened gradually?
So it just gradually got worse. And when I was writing my book, I realized it was like, oh, I should have left then. Oh, I should have left then. I should have left then. But so it was just gradually got worse and worse and worse. You know, like that analogy of, what is it, a frog or a lobster or something you put in the boiling water and, you know, it doesn't really realize anything's wrong until it's too late. But yeah, so it was like that. And also, I didn't have any college education. I had only worked in daycare, in retail, and I worked in a bakery, worked as an aide in the public school. So I didn't have anything that I felt like, you know, I could support myself, you know, and my daughter, because my son was already on his own at that point. But I didn't feel like I could make it on my own, and I was still kind of staying mainly for my daughter, you know, because I didn't want her to sort of go through what I did or anything close. So I stayed for her, but I was also then at the end, like the last few years, when he was home, because he usually worked second shift, which was kind of a blessing, you know, like a 2 to 10 or 2 to 11. But so I would be in a different part of the house or a different room when he was home, just to avoid whatever he was going to say to me. And so then in my 30s, when my daughter was in junior high school, you know, her early teens, I started nursing school. And through that is when I gained my independence and gained some confidence. And it was when I was going through my finals, and it had been years already, and now I'm going through my finals, and I'm about to take the state boards for nursing, and I've graduated from nursing school, about to take the state boards and that, and I told him that I wanted a divorce. Because now I see where I can take care of myself. And now I also see that my daughter is, you know, she's about to enter high school. She's, you know, kind of living her own life anyway. And I didn't plan that I was going to move far or anything. So then that's when I wanted a divorce. And he wanted to go to counseling. When earlier in our marriage, I had suggested counseling, and he put it on me. He said I was the one that needed counseling, not him or not us together. And I didn't go at that time because I knew it was a relationship issue. So at that time, then he did suggest counseling, and it had been 15 years, and I had already made up my mind I was leaving, but I agreed to counseling. And he didn't do, so you get homework or you talk to the counselor, and so he didn't really participate or, you know, put any effort into the healing of the relationship or whatever. He didn't try. In fact, he got worse. So then I felt like, okay, now I'm the one trying harder to save this marriage that I don't even want anymore, and then he is, and he's the one who suggested it. So that's when I just found an apartment and left.
When you said you were going to leave,
mm-hmm.
Was it like shocking for him? Was he like devastated? Would he beg you? Like, I don't mean this in a kind of like sensationalist way, because that's not what I do here.
Yeah.
But
right.
I have some experience with toxic relationships, so I can relate. And,
mm-hmm.
you know, particularly when you said like, oh, I could have left then, I'd really relate to that.
Right. Yeah.
But like, because what do they call it? The narcissist, right? He's a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like putting it all on you, but then
mm-hmm.
he's trying to control you and da-da-da-da-da. But then as soon as you're like, well, I have control now, I'm going to leave, take the kids, etc., I have my own thing, he's lost all control. So I just
mm-hmm.
wonder, like, what did that look like in that moment?
He was shocked, and I was shocked that he was shocked. I had stopped wearing my wedding ring like a year before, and he never noticed.
That says a lot.
Yeah.
To be honest.
And yeah, he was shocked, even though, I would complain. He would come off of work at 10 or 11 and he'd go to the bar and I wouldn't see him. And he would drink all weekend. And, I was somewhat standing up for myself, and letting him know how I felt about these things.
Like you'd say to him, hey, we ever going to go out somewhere? You're going to take me somewhere nice? And he just, whatever kind of attitude.
He'd say, why don't you come to the bar with me? Because I wouldn't go to the bar with him.
I was going to say, that's the height of romance right there. Like, yeah, let's go to the bar.
Right.
It's fucking great. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, it just infuriates me to hear that, because it's like a relationship is like anything else in life. You get what you put in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, it's all about the healthiness of the dynamic and stuff. But you can't like take someone for granted. Right, and if you do, and then it ends up like ending, it's like you only have yourself to blame for that.
Yeah. And he would criticize me all the time, and it was like any idea that I had, any new friends that I had, anything to do with anything that I brought up, there would be a criticism about it. And so it was kind of surprising to me that he was so shocked. It's like, if you are so critical of everything I do and everything I think and every interest I have, why do you even want to be with me? I would think you would be for this divorce as well. But no. And then another thing, and this is sort of a cliche thing, but he said, I should have bought you flowers. It's like, no, that wouldn't have helped. You should have behaved differently.
I mean, when you talk about like the criticism angle, obviously it's a manipulation tactic to kind of wear someone down and keep them grounded, so they feel like, I have nothing if not this person. I mean, at least that's what it is in their mind. But what did it look like as far as, okay, you say, hey, I'm going to try this new thing. Like, give me an example of maybe something that stands out for you, criticism wise, and then how you sort of fought back with that.
Yeah. So one big thing is, I had my daughter at home and with midwives, and I was super interested in that. And when I started looking into becoming a midwife, obviously before nursing, I started apprenticing with midwives and started buying all these books, and he would complain about the money for the books because it wasn't going to lead to anything. This was a hobby, and, I didn't have a medical background, so how could I possibly do that? And, he made it sound like it was an expensive hobby when this is something I wanted to do as a career and put a lot of time into. And then also he was making me feel bad because when there would be a birth, you were pretty much on call. So I would have to leave for the birth. And he would make me feel bad that I was leaving the family and, not kind of keeping up my duties as a mother and or a wife and that kind of a thing by doing this. So that's one big one. And it was really important to me. I really loved it. And it's what ultimately turned into me becoming a nurse, I believe.
So, yeah, you decided at some point, okay, I'm not going to pursue the midwifery, but I am going to push to nursing. You mentioned it had been about a year of you stopping wearing the ring. So like there's a plan beginning to formulate here of like, is an exit plan, should we call it? What's the moment that you're like, the light bulb comes on, you're like, okay, I'm going to leave him and this is how I'm going to do it. And it's going to look like this timeline. Like, where's that kind of eureka moment?
So when I knew I was going to pass nursing, it's like, now I can do it. Now I can do it. That late,
really?
Yeah. I mean, I really think, in hindsight, I really think that when I first started classes in nursing, I knew that this was my ticket out. This would be my way out, but I didn't have enough faith in myself. I didn't have enough confidence to believe that I could possibly pass and have a career as a nurse. I didn't really know that I could. And when I went to school, I had, I did everything in my power. Like I took every opportunity to join every study group, any tutoring that I could get for free. I did that. I took even a class on, study habits. And so I did everything in my power to, if I didn't pass, at least I knew that I did everything I could. But I didn't have that confidence to think that I could, but I gave it a try. And so as soon as I realized, and I was even going through the finals, and it was the very end of everything, of all of it. And the counselor, the student counselor, whatever, I was telling her about this more personal stuff going on in my life, and she was like, "Don't go through a divorce right now at this time," and I was like, I have to, I have to. Like, I could not stay in that house like another day. It was like, I have to. Like, as soon as I realized, oh, I can do it, that's when, like, I started putting things in motion to move out and everything, and start the divorce and everything. So yeah, it was at the very end of nursing that I really saw that light bulb. Yeah.
When you pass and you see, I've passed, how did you think and feel about yourself in that moment? Because you've painted a picture before of saying, I didn't believe in myself, I didn't think I could do it.
Yeah.
And now you've achieved it. You've passed. You placed a bet on yourself, and you were right to do so.
Yeah.
So how did you think and feel?
It was amazing. It was amazing. It was like a whole new world opened up for me. But even just going to school, like, I feel like I was so, like, kind of sheltered and so kind of just, in this little world, and then as soon as I started school, it started really opening and expanding for me more and more, nursing school. So when I passed, I was flabbergasted. I was just amazed, and it did help my confidence a lot, but obviously not enough, because I still had several years of going through another abusive relationship, much worse. But yeah, I felt completely free, and I had always felt stifled and stuck in that marriage. Like, after the first few years, I felt really stuck, and like I didn't have a choice, and I had to look at the positives, as far as, I'm not hungry, my kids aren't hungry, those kinds of things. We're in a pretty nice house, and a beautiful area of the country and whatever. And my kids didn't have to move around all the time, and just that kind of stuff. So I never, felt like I had a choice in my life. And this was like one of the first times that I really, like you said, I bet on myself, and I succeeded. So it was tremendous. And I don't know that I realized that as much at the time either, but looking back, it was really a tremendous thing, and amazing that I went through with it and did it all and got out. Yeah.
In that moment, like, you didn't see yourself differently just yet.
I saw myself as free. It was like, for the first time, I'm not under somebody else's control. Yeah.
I just wondered, not just about him, but like for you and your personal achievement, because it's a big thing to go to classes, especially when you're older as well, to go through all these classes, to get this qualification, and then have all this personal stuff going on, but you're still pushing, you've got children, all these different factors, and you achieve it. Like, I just wondered, like, if it really changed the way that you looked at yourself and how you thought about things moving forward.
Yeah, I think the only thing I can say is that I felt free for the first time. For the very first time, I felt free to be fully me and free to do what I wanted. I mean, even something as little as, buying new stuff for the kitchen and stuff for the bed, just decorating things the way I wanted to, and not having to consult anyone else, which is not a big deal, really.
I think
but
it
was like,
I mean, it's it's like, why is my judgment not worth something? Like,
yeah,
why can't I? It's your house, it's your home. Like, why not?
Yeah. And so what I was going to say is, so when I first moved out, he really thought that I would come back, that this was kind of a phase I was going through. And so he, believe it or not, he helped me move, and he made a big joke of it, and he brought furniture over and he helped me move because I didn't move far away from the house. I moved in an apartment that was closer to my daughter's school because our house was like out in the woods, and then I moved it closer into town. And so he would again, he was still criticizing me for like the rug that I bought or whatever, because why am I buying these things when I'm just going to come back, and then what am I going to do with these things, or why am I spending the money on this? And I'm like, wait a minute, this is my money. I am not coming back. And so then I never allowed him to come over ever again. We barely ever talked. Since then. So yeah, that was like one of the first times I really kind of stood up for myself. I mean, I did when I left him, when I divorced him and all of that. And even when I went to school and all of that. But I was like free from him. It's like, I'm not in your house anymore. I'm not your wife anymore. You don't have any say in what I choose to do.
It sounds like it was a long process then. Like, so you get the nursing qualification, you decide you're going to leave him, you get the apartment sort of not long afterwards. He acts like a sanctimonious prick. He then leaves. And then, so I'm guessing like the divorce just took time or like, walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, so the divorce took some time. We were in this area of, it was like his hometown. I had a few friends, but kind of more superficial, maybe just one or two that were a little closer. But for some reason, I think part of it was a kind of shame or embarrassment that people didn't know really what was going on at home with him. And, and we had been together so long that people in the town knew his name and knew him. He worked in law enforcement, which was one of the main employments in that area because it was a very small area. It is a very small area.
Was he a police officer or did he just work for the police? Okay.
No, he was actually a corrections officer. I can say what he was. My last name is not his last name anymore. So yeah, he was a corrections officer, and so the state prison was huge, and a lot of employment was through there. But he had grown up there, and a lot of the people in the area he had went to school with and everything else, and he had also other family members that people knew his name. And so I was a little bit embarrassed, and so yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I guess we're trying to build the kind of you after him situation, you know what I mean? Like takes time, trying to divorce him. I'm guessing after his snarky comments, there's like a realization point of, oh, she's not coming back. Yeah.
Does that happen?
Well, we didn't talk. I didn't talk to him. He didn't talk to me. And that was kind of it, except for what had to be done for the divorce. And yeah, so we had kind of, before I even left, believe it or not, I think this was no, I don't think it was the end of counseling because he didn't really do that. But we had tried to, this is a big mistake I made, we had tried to come up with some things written down of how we were going to do this so that we didn't have to get a lawyer, so we could just have like an amicable, that's my huge mistake, an amicable divorce, an amicable split. And my daughter was already a teenager. We thought we'll let her and I was living in town. Let her decide where she wanted to go, when she wanted to go, keep her room there. Okay. I would have a room for her, all that stuff. And we had been married 15 years. I wasn't asking for any money at all. I thought, at that time, I thought, he was so shocked by it. He had paid for everything, most of our marriage. This just shows my self-value, I guess. I didn't want to be tied to him in any way. So I was like, okay, I agreed to all of this. Well, it ended up that, down the road for years afterwards, he ended up sort of manipulating the system. And there was even some corruption with legal stuff because he knew people. And anyway, so when I first divorced, it was less than a year that I ended up married again, because it was somebody that was from my hometown that was a friend when I was pregnant. And obviously it was a man, but he wasn't the baby's father. And he was very good to me at that time when the baby's father wasn't. He was very interested in, how did your appointment go when I was pregnant? How was the baby doing? And, there was a short time I was in bed rest. So he was like bringing me food and coming over to keep me company and actually like play guitar for me and stuff like that. So he was a really good person at that time. Well, he came back into my life. We started communicating, and we got married really quickly. I didn't even get to know who this person was as an adult, what they had been through. I thought I was going to be the third wife. I ended up being the sixth wife, which I found out after divorce. And he was a worse drinker. One of my big complaints about my first husband was how much he drank. This guy drank even more and even was doing drugs at the end. And I don't know if he was in the beginning. I didn't know it. Or if he was, I don't know. But yeah, he was abusive in every way and much, much worse. So like I said, I jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. But I had mistaken like familiarity for love. And a familiarity that I thought I knew, but it's from several years, like we're talking like 20, maybe even 30 years earlier, at that point. So, yeah.
Would you say this is kind of a rebound situation? Or I don't know if rebound's really the right word, but like you said, it was like 9 months from the divorce. Is that right?
It's hard to know exactly when the divorce. So I left, I think it was around April. Yeah, it was about 8-9 months. Yeah.
So it was like you were lonely and here's a guy who's stepping up and it's like, all right then, kind of taking a chance kind of situation.
I felt like a stranger in the town because everybody knew him and everybody knew me as his wife. And it was like, oh, here's somebody on my side, somebody that knows me from a long time ago, from my hometown. So it was kind of like that. And I think I just let it escalate quickly. I don't know why exactly. Looking back, even, I don't know why that happened so quickly. But I was in therapy, as I said, after that divorce. So I was married to that second marriage for 8 years. And I found out in therapy that that's real common to marry right away and even marry somebody else who's what you got away from or worse. So I don't know. I still don't know the reason, but it helped me feel a little better about not beating myself up for it because it is so common. A lot of women do that. I don't know why.
I don't know if this applies, but like I can say from my experience, one thing that changed for me was when I put up like boundaries of like, I will not accept this, right. And this. And it wasn't like I just think this now. It was like I've made my decision. Yeah. I'm like, and there were people I've met like who probably would have been toxic and I'm like, nope. And like they could be a bit funny and be like, nope, not accepting that. And then eventually I met my now girlfriend, but took years to get to that point. So I don't know if that's part
absolutely
of it, maybe.
Absolutely. And that feels, that's self-respect. I think once you gain that self-respect, then you will not accept anything less. That's when that happens. And that happened for me through therapy after that second divorce. That's when I gained my self-respect and also confidence in myself that, that it was a good thing that I left the first husband. It was a good thing I left the second husband, all the reasons that it was a good thing. And, I was showing up for myself. I was protecting myself. I was saving myself. And everything that you've learned from those relationships will, prevent you from going into something similar again. Because, of course, I didn't trust myself. I thought, I've done this twice and I went from bad to worse. I'm not even interested in a relationship because I don't know that it won't happen again. I don't trust myself to make that decision. But through therapy or to see those red flags or to see that disrespect, so it was through therapy that I learned all of what I've gained through those experiences. Yeah. And then too, through therapy, like I mentioned in the beginning, that's when I really realized how all the childhood stuff kind of connected to what happened as an adult.
You hear people talk about these red flags. It's quite an important marker sometimes in a person, and it's not always obvious.
Right.
What were those red flags that you learned?
Yeah, so, controlling things for sure, making you feel bad for decisions that you're making towards yourself, things that you want to do for your own improvement, and then making you feel like that's not something you should be doing for whatever reason. And then also, hard boundaries that you have being crossed because, they have the right to be themselves too. And so it makes you feel like, oh, I shouldn't be demanding or whatever. So those are some things. But also, talking about red flags, I think it's really important for people to recognize it's not so much a list of what are red flags, but more of how do I feel when I'm with this person? That's the red flag. Do I feel like I'm stifled? Do I feel like I'm on eggshells? Do I feel like I can't speak up for my own feelings or thoughts or anything? How do I feel when I'm with this person? Am I fully myself? Am I happy? Just general happiness. How do I feel? How do I behave? Like I said, am I on eggshells? Am I speaking freely? Do I feel like I need to hold back at all? So, how do I feel? That's the flag to look for.
During the course of that relationship, your second relationship, I'm guessing you would have seen parallels with your first relationship. There would have been thoughts in your mind of this is happening again, and as you said, it was worse. Were you afraid to like, you were afraid you couldn't get out? It lasted 8 years, so clearly, I mean, you're clearly not the sort of person who gives up easily, and you sit things through, and you're family orientated and all this. So was that in your mind? Was it like, I don't want to be a failure twice? Like, why did you stick around?
Yeah, it was more because, I knew him when we were kids. He did have childhood trauma. And I felt like as a nurse, my insurance would be enough to help him. And I was making enough to pay for all the household bills. I wanted to give him the resources that he needed to heal. So I thought, oh, he's going to be able to go to therapy. We're sticking it out. That's what we're doing. We're sticking it out until he gets some therapy, till he gets some help, and all of that. That was my thinking, that I'm perfectly happy to, pay the bills and work and let him get the help he needed, and then things would be better afterwards. But that's why I stuck it out as long as I did. Yeah, I never really felt like, I don't want to be a failure again. I don't want to divorce again. I never had that feeling for some reason. But I just wanted to, it wasn't like so many times people think that, you think you can save somebody or something like that. It wasn't me. It was what, the resources that he could get through my job. And I felt like I understood him more so than, like I said, I knew that he had been married twice before, when in reality he had been married 5 times before, which I didn't know till the divorce. But, that maybe his first 2 wives didn't really understand that he needed help, that he had mental health issues through his abuse as a child and stuff like that. I felt like I knew him better, and I knew the kind of person he could be. I knew that there was a good soul in there, or so I thought. And, from what I had seen when we were teens. And I just wanted him to be able to get back to that person and to heal. And that's what I was kind of waiting for, kind of trying to help him through that.
You mentioned that there was more serious abuse, physical abuse, is that right?
Yeah, at the end.
Right. Okay, so that was that. Because what we've established obviously here is that you were trying to help this guy, you felt responsibility. When something like that happens, obviously that adds a new dynamic to everything. I'm not going to sit here and be like, why didn't you just leave now? At the end of the day, right. It's a sort of situation where
I've said that to myself, so yeah.
Well, nothing is ever straightforward in life. I know from my experience, I had the same as you. beating. I actually thought that the emotional abuse was worse than the physical abuse. I was like, you can be smacked in the face 100 times, but the mental stuff will keep you destroyed. And it's not until like years afterwards that I realized, like, oh wow, they like really got in my head and messed things up. Because like the bruises heal, but the mental stuff that can be lifelong.
Yeah.
So you said it happened later on. Like, were you beginning to think like, I need to get away from this now?
Yeah. So that was my hard line. That was, if it gets physical, I'm leaving. And so it was physical, more of like shoving, pushing, not necessarily slapping or hitting in any way. And that was, it wasn't a physical thing that hurt. It didn't leave marks in that. And he was still in a pattern of, trying to get help, which of course he obviously wasn't. He was self-sabotaging, but at that time I didn't know. But, so I had already decided I was going to leave because of the drinking and the mixing of the drugs, and realizing afterwards that he was drinking along on these drugs, and he was trying to get therapy and just going against everything. So I was again, and one of the biggest mistakes is I had said, I can't do this anymore. I know I'm working harder for your wellness than you are. I'm going to divorce, but I will wait until you're on your feet. I didn't want to leave him homeless. I didn't want to leave him with nothing. So I was going to wait till he was on his feet and then leave and start the divorce. And that's when he really beat me up to the point of I was unconscious on the floor in my closet because I was hiding from him because he was throwing furniture around and just really going off. And that's when I called the police so that I could leave, because he wouldn't let me leave when he was throwing furniture around and being violent. And I was trying to leave. He wouldn't let me leave. He took the keys and everything else. So that's when I called the police. And I hadn't seen him again since then.
Were your children in the house at the time when this is happening?
No, the kids were already grown.
Okay.
The kids were already grown out on their own at that point already.
So you were able to get away from him. You called the police on him. They get rid of him.
No, they let me leave. I said, No, I want to leave.
Okay. I
don't know what they did after I left. They tried to get me to go to get an ambulance. I said, no, I'm fine. I just wanted out of there so bad. And I had already called a friend. I was going to go to a friend's house where he didn't know where she lived. So it was like important to go somewhere that he would not be able to find me. I don't even know at that point if they took him. I still don't know if they took him anywhere or if I don't know what they did after I left. But they allowed me to leave.
So walk me through like the next steps. So like you're staying with a friend and you're kind of trying to piece together like, okay, this has gone crazy. Like I know I should have left years ago, but this is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind in this point? Because obviously it takes a while to kind of decompress from something like that.
Yeah.
And, you're at least safe. You're with a friend. He doesn't know where you are. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
Where's your head at and how do you kind of rebuild from that?
So my head is at just kind of finding a place to live. I'm still working full time at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just going through the motions. Okay, what do I need to do now? What do I need to do now? What do I need to do now? Just going through the motions of what's the next step. And when I first told him I was divorcing, but I was going to give him a chance to get on his feet, I started looking at places to live. So I already had a few places kind of lined up. And one place was a little house that was just owned by a couple. It wasn't like a management property or anything. So the process was going to be a lot easier. And they had told me when I looked at that little house that if I needed to get in sooner, that would be great. Obviously, they wanted to get it filled. And I was like, oh, that won't happen. But then I called them and said, hey, it just so happens I could use that ASAP. And so it was just 2 nights on my friend's couch before I was able to get in that house. So that was nice. But I also, so before that, even like the next day after that, I went to the management property that owned the house that we were renting. I get my name off the lease. I gave them the situation. I said, I don't think they needed it, but I was like, there's, the police came, so there's probably a police report if you want to see, and I was like, at that point, I didn't care what happened to him. I was like, well, I'm gone, I'm safe, and I'm done worrying about what happens to him. So if he didn't make enough money and they were going to kick him out, that's up to them. But I wanted my name off the lease so I wouldn't be held accountable for paying rent after when I was not living there anymore. So that was my first step. Then to get the place to live and go through the process of divorcing, making it all legal. Yeah.
And so what age are you at this point?
Gosh, so I think I'm at the end of my 40s. Yeah, I think I'm at the end of my 40s.
So this is where we come to the breakdown at 50. So it's like
Yeah.
it's two really abusive marriages, having to support yourself, raise your kids, which you successfully did, by the way. Congratulations, well done on that. Like,
Thank you.
Just everything you had to deal with, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they don't even know everything that's happened. They don't want to read my book. They don't know all of.
You managed
all
to
of
keep it from them?
Well, my daughter has said, later on in life, she said, I understand why you left.
Right.
I see how Dad treats women, now I see it, and I understand why you left. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be a lot. I mean, it's a tough decision for a parent as well, isn't it? I mean, obviously you don't want to traumatize them and show them things, but you don't want to lie to them either. So it's like, what do I do? And it's like, I think you made the right decision. Yeah, you protected them, and it's like, if they find out as adults, then that's, it is what it is kind of thing. But I can get that. I suppose with their decision not to read the book, I suppose in many ways it's like it's like opening a can of worms, isn't it? There might be like a feeling of guilt, which wouldn't be fair because it's not their fault, but it's like, oh, what if I'd have known? Maybe I could have helped. I wonder if that
I think so. That's how my son feels, I know, because there was only 17 years between us. But my daughter, I think she's just afraid she has a very good relationship with her dad. She's afraid to know what a monster he is, or she's afraid to turn her feelings on him. She doesn't want to hate him. She doesn't want to be mad at him. And I respect that, and I get that, and I'm glad that she has a relationship with him. He's never been, abusive to his kids and that. So yeah, I'm sure that's how it is with her. I don't know that she would feel any guilt. It would just be like, she might feel guilty, like, why didn't I see that? Why didn't I notice that? Or, how did Mom keep that from us? Like you said. So, yeah.
This book that you wrote, I didn't come this far to only come this far.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that title for a second. What's the, why that title?
So, at the time that I had the big mental breakdown, it was like I was suicidal. So, once I got past that, it's like, okay, I didn't make it through all of that to just stay here now, the way things are. It's like I had to get past that and do something different with my life and be, in not only just basically enjoy my life, but feel a sense of purpose, to feel some self-love, and to just, to go on with my life to where it would be a good life. I didn't come this far out of that deep, dark hole to sit on the edge and look down the hole. That's basically what that is. I had to get away from that deep, dark hole, So, yeah, I didn't come out of that to just stay right there.
And this book is like in the form of a memoir, is that right?
Yeah. It's kind of more of, I always say it's a memoir, but looking back, I think it's more of like an autobiography. Okay. Because it really goes through the whole thing, So, yeah.
Why should people read this book? Who's it for?
It's for women who feel stuck in their lives, who maybe were in bad relationships, got out of them, and then feel stuck, like, I don't know how to go on from here, just to know that it's possible to go on and heal and have a good life afterwards, just to know that it's possible will sometimes help people to get out of that. Or it's for somebody that's in a bad relationship right now, or they are in a cycle of bad relationships, just to know that it's possible to get out, even if you don't have a clue. You don't know the next step maybe, but that first step is just believing that it can happen, that you can heal.
What's been the reaction to the book? What kind of feedback are you receiving? I know a lot of the time, especially with books like this, the response can be overwhelming. What's that been like?
So I don't have I don't market it very too much, because I don't want my mom to know, and I don't want my family members, my aunts and that to know, because I don't want it to get back to my mom. So I don't market it a lot, and there's been just under 100 sales of it, but I have gotten a lot of feedback about not, from people that I do know. It's like, I had no idea that was all going on, and I'm sorry you were going through that, and why didn't you speak up? But then other people have said, the kinds of things you would expect, oh, you were so brave, you were so courageous, and I always feel like, I just had the will to keep going. I don't know that I was brave or courageous or any of that. It was more of, a lot of it, I was, just crazy, or just trying to survive, or just numb. So yeah, that's really kind of the response I get is, yeah.
I feel like there's
from people who knew me in the periphery, it's like, oh, we didn't know. And then people who didn't know me at all are like, oh, you're so brave. Yeah.
That's good to hear, but I do sort of see a bit of a contradiction there, because like on one hand you're like, I want to protect these people, my family members, I don't want them to know I've done this thing. But then on the other hand, you're promoting this book internationally. I mean, I'm a guy in the UK. I have an audience in different countries. And so you're reaching different people around the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been on several podcasts talking about it. Yeah.
This is what I mean. And
yeah.
So clearly I feel like there's got to be something in your back of your mind that's like, well, I want this story to reach people, more people. So,
well, when my mother passes away,
okay.
When my mother passes away, she's in her 80s. She's got the beginnings of dementia. When she passes away, then I will be promoting it more. I just, for some reason, I just have it in me. I don't want people to feel bad. Like, I feel like my aunts will feel like they'll feel some guilt. They'll feel bad about it, and I don't want them to. But I'm 60 years old this year, so I mean, they're all in their 80s, and so like I said, when my mother passes, then I will be promoting it more. I do want it to reach the people who need it. So my mother, my aunts, even my sister, who is 64 or 65, whatever she is now, she doesn't really listen to podcasts. She's not on social media. If it reaches somebody that I didn't want it to, then I feel like there's a reason for that. I
will say this though, like if you're recounting in your book is anything like today, I don't see obviously they would feel guilt because of who they are in relation to you and stuff like that, but
yeah,
you've not turned around and blamed anyone. You've not been like, oh, this person's at fault, like you've been very matter of fact, and I think you've been very fair, and you kind of just said like that okay, just going back to childhood for a second, it really seems to me like it's like, well, these things happened, and she did the best she could given these circumstances, and it doesn't seem like a woman who didn't try or who didn't care. It's more kind of like, life's beating her down, and what do I do? What do I do? Like, how can I be there for them when life is giving me this? Because life will do that, sometimes it just throws all these challenges that seem impossible to overcome, and you do get desperate, you do get beaten down, you do kind of find yourself stuck sometimes, But But yeah, no, I respect your decision. I get it. But I also think that I don't sense anything in you that's like you're trying to destroy anyone with this. It's just
Right.
a memoir of your life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I hope it reaches more people. Yeah. I really do. I think a lot of people need to hear it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think it will eventually. But yeah, I'm kind of waiting for my mom to pass for my... So, you see, so in the book I have, my name is Patience instead of Pamela. All the names have been changed. So anybody who knows me and knows the people around me will know, like, because the names are very similar to what they really are in real life, but I've changed all the names. And I did that because I wasn't sure if I was going to put my name as the author or have a pen name. And I decided to put my own name on it because when I pass away, if my children or if I ever have any grandchildren, if I'm somebody's ancestor someday, if they want to read what my life was like, they wouldn't get it if it was a pen name. So I decided to put my own name on there, more so for my children than like ancestors, or somebody that I'm an ancestor to down the road. But I think it'd be really cool for later in life, much later in life, for people to be like, oh, that's what happened. Oh, that's... Because I know that my life is kind of confusing to some of my family and some people because I moved around so much. I'm now in a loving, respectful, equal marriage. So I've been married 3 times. I've moved around a lot. I've just been through a lot, and they all know that, but nobody knows the extent of it. So I think it'd be really interesting later in life for people to be like, oh, okay, now it makes sense.
Moving things forward, taking it back for a second, then moving it forward. So we mentioned the breakdown, but we didn't sort of like jump into that. We gave the context for where you were at in your life, moving to that point. Why do you think that breakdown occurred? Like what happened?
Yeah, so it was the very first time. So when I divorced the first time, I said I had this big feeling of freedom, but my daughter was still in school. She was still a minor. So this second divorce, my daughter was an adult. I wasn't married. I was free for the first time. It was like I had nobody that I was responsible for. I had a good job and worked a ton of overtime and had savings. I had money. I was able to pay like months in advance when I first took the house. So it was the first time that I could just almost relax and exhale. And that's when my body decided, okay, we're going to work through all of this now.
Wow.
Like it crashed on me like I hit a brick wall. I thought, oh, good. Everything's wonderful now. This is going to be the best time in my life. And my mental health said, oh, no. We are crashing now. We got the time, I used to joke because my second husband was in and out of mental health facilities. I used to joke, when do I get my breakdown? Because I was working 16-hour shifts a lot sometimes, like that, and 12-hour shifts, 16-hour shifts. I was beat down myself, exhausted all the time, and dealing with him. So I used to say, when do I get my mental breakdown, kind of as a joke? Well, I got it. After that, I just spiraled downward and was so fearful, so anxious, so depressed. Like I said before, I was suicidal. So it just came crashing down. And it was everything. And it wasn't until I went to therapy that I realized all the childhood stuff, all the first marriage stuff that I didn't get any help for, all of it just, just was a wave that came over me. Or a brick wall that I crashed into. Really.
So it's like you always kind of had your foot on the gas pedal and you never dealt with any of it. And then suddenly It's like, stop. Oh, wow. 30, 40 odd years of just stuff. Boom.
Yes.
So how did therapy help? Like, obviously, I imagine probably a friend or someone would have been like, hey, you should go therapy. And you're like, yeah, I should. And then, and so you do. And you've been to therapy before, so you knew what to expect. But this is obviously a bit different. How did it help?
So I ended up moving on a bus from Missouri to California. And it wasn't until trying to get myself sort of where I had a place to live, where I could make some money, support myself, or just be able to live and not be homeless, while I was going through all this mental stuff. And once I was kind of secured in that, then I went for some therapy. And so that was like a year, I think almost 2 years of therapy from there. And until, I started realizing that I could heal and started feeling much better and more, had some inner peace. My life was not chaotic around me, and I felt safe and for the first time in a long time. And and then so when you move from one state to another in the U.S. with your nursing license, you have to reapply to another state because there are state boards of nursing in every state. So you can't just go and get a job. So you have to apply. And so finally I was able to do that and just sort of get back started on my feet. Yeah.
So you're in your 60s now. Like, what's the last 10 years been like?
So I'm turning 60 this year.
Sorry, my apologies.
No, that's okay. And thank you. So the last 10 years, it was 2016, so it's been 10 years since I've come to California. And the first few were really hard, but I was fighting for myself. And then ever since really 2018 to 2020, each year has been so much better than the year before. Each year, so much better than the year before. Even this year, like even last year, I was like, it can't get any better than this. And now it is. And I just would have never, ever thought. So I was sort of not dating, but I would be going on dates just to sort of distract me and to try to have some fun in that and meet people. And I didn't want a relationship. I didn't expect a relationship. My now husband, we got married in 2020.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And it was just a relationship like I never even knew was possible. Just feeling respected, just feeling like I could be completely myself. There were no eggshells in what I said and anything, anything I did. It's supportive and encouraging, but this was somebody, so other people I had dated or went out on dates with would be like trying to save you or, wanted to be your hero or they would knock, like if I said I don't ever want to marry again, I'm not looking for a relationship. Oh, you just haven't met the good man yet, kind of a thing. So they were like going against what I said, and that was a huge red flag. Mm-hmm. It's like, if you're going to disagree with how I feel, I don't need you in my life. So this was the first one. He wasn't trying to save me. He was doing the same thing I was. He had been in a bad relationship, and he was just going day by day and date by date. He didn't, he wasn't really searching for another wife or anything by any means. And so, we got together, and just every time we saw each other was better and better each time. And we moved in together in less than a year. And that started off kind of more for financial reasons in the beginning. But then when the pandemic hit, and we had been living together for 3 years, and it was the very first time that we had spent so much time alone together, and we realized how great this is. We knew people around us who were getting divorces or, having a hard time living with each other, when they can't leave. And we started going for walks at night just in the neighborhood, and just our relationship grew through that. So then we got married. And then he got a great promotion, was able to work from home, and I was able to quit nursing finally. Because nursing had been I had burnt out on that through all of this as well. So just everything's gotten better and better since then.
What would you attribute that to, other than just a happy relationship? Was there anything in particular that's different from the rest of your life?
Well, I think going through therapy, I don't think I'd be in this relationship or this point in my life if I hadn't gone through therapy. That was very helpful. And also writing it down, whether I published the book or not, just writing everything out was a huge part of my therapy. And I would suggest that to anybody. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to tell anybody about it. But just getting out of you and being able to connect those dots, to being able to say, oh, this is what happened. Here it is in black and white. I can see why this happened from that and that, just being able to see that really was very helpful. Yeah.
Why did you decide to quit nursing?
Well, first of all, there's so many reasons. I do have a second book, Behind the Mask, Gloves, and Scrubs, that I published as well on that whole story. But there's just so much corruption in nursing in the U.S. anyway.
Oh, wow.
And I have to say this is my experience because other nurses might disagree. But but there's a lot of corruption and just a lot of things that, I worked several, like 16-hour shifts, like I said, and I would have like 20 to 40 patients all on my own. We were always understaffed. When I was going through that second divorce, I couldn't get a day off. I was trying to arrange a day off and pick a day so that I could, do everything I needed to do for the divorce. And I couldn't get it approved, so I just had to call in finally. And so just a lot of little things. But mainly, it's not the job. You never go home feeling like you've done good. You always go home wishing you could have done more. You always go home feeling bad for this patient or that patient or people that need better care than what you're able to provide or what they're able to get from that facility. And you're never satisfied that, phew, I helped people today. You never go home with that feeling like you felt like you would. Plus, I have really bad arthritis in my hands now, and that's directly related to the nursing. There was I'd come home in a lot of pain in my hands.
What did being a nurse teach you about life?
That things aren't what they seem. Like, people see nurses a lot of times as quote unquote angels, and there's just so much behind the scenes, and there's so much that's going on that people don't realize that, it's not necessarily like corrupt nurses, it's corrupt facilities and systems. And so I think what it's taught me about life is just, you never know, just things, which I guess I already knew that, but I mean, just even like systems, like I'm not one for conspiracy theories or anything, and I'm not like against the government, but the older I get and after this nursing, it's like, I don't trust, healthcare in the U.S. is not about health care. It's all about the business.
There, you heard it here first, folks. That'll get some people. What's the worst advice you've ever received?
So when my sister had passed away, we were in the hospital waiting room. My mother's friend was with us. She pointed right at me in my face. I was just about to turn 14. She says, "Don't you cry. Don't you cry. You be strong for your mother. Don't you cry." And that was the worst advice because I still have trouble expressing emotions today, all these years later. That really sunk into me. And that was one of the worst things that somebody could have said to somebody when their sibling was passing. Yeah.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received. So I had a business coach at one point. I was trying to get out of nursing. I went to, when I did leave nursing, I went into hypnotherapy. And I was also doing pet sitting on the side. I was really focused on the hypnotherapy. The pet sitting was just like my side gig. And pet sitting was taking off, doing excellent in that. The hypnotherapy was not doing as well and causing me a lot of stress. And the business coach said, why not focus on, I had these two things that were kind of equal as far as what I love doing. And one is really taking off, but you're looking at this one, just putting everything into it, trying to get it to go. Why not just put everything into and focus on the one that's doing well instead of fighting so hard for this other one, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I did that, and it changed my whole mindset, changed my life. And yeah, That was the best advice.
What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
I think it's, and a lot of people know this, and I already said this, but I think that there's always hope, but I was going to say that you never know what's going on behind anybody. You can't take anything for face value. But I think bigger advice, better advice, there is always hope. I think so many people don't believe that. I didn't believe that, but there truly is. No matter what kind of situation you're in, there's always some hope to be had.
How did you have hope throughout all the years with everything that you've dealt with, everything you've experienced, everything you've gone through? How did you keep going?
Well, because my mother had lost a daughter already, I didn't want her to lose another one. So that's really kind of what kept me hanging on and kept me trying, was because I didn't want my mother to go through burying 2 of her daughters. And before me, she had had twin boys that she lost. So I didn't want to put my mother through that. But I also had a plan. Like, if I went through this therapy and it didn't work, I wasn't going to be here anymore. So it was like, okay, I'm going to, just like nursing, I'm going to give it everything I can. And if I still fail, I know that I've given it my all. So, yeah.
A final question for you to sort of draw things all for a close to an amazing show. Do you have any upcoming projects or final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
So, as far as upcoming projects, I am writing a 3rd book. I don't have a title yet for it, but that's going to be more the books are focused on all these terrible things happened and then I healed. Mm-hmm. So it ends off good, but this one's going to be all about the healing process. So that's my next project. Yeah.
Have you started writing it yet, or are you sort of like... Yeah. So when do you reckon it will be released, roughly?
I'm hoping the end of the year. By the end of the year or the beginning of the new year. That's what I'm hoping.
Well, best of luck, man. I know how difficult it is to write a book. It's who knows, but yeah, well done. As far as today's show, thank you so much for sharing your story. You're amazing, and I know my listeners will feel exactly the same way.
Thank you.
I don't know what else to say, but other than thank you so much, honestly.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And to all the listeners of the Christian Reeve podcast, I hope you found this show as amazing and inspirational as I did. I'll make sure to put links in the bio for where you can find Pamela's books. Thank you so much for watching and listening to the Christian Reeve podcast, and I'll see you all in the next one.